Hello, aloha, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm taking you to the ocean. If you're new around here, my name is Keiko. I'm a mixed media artist and watercolor paint maker based in Hawaii. Seascapes is also the first prompt in my challenge this month over on Instagram, and I'm gonna leave a link down below in the description in case you would like to join the challenge and the community. Let's talk about supplies first. I'm using a cellulose-based watercolor paper today by Canson or Canson XL watercolor paper. It's pretty thick and sturdy, but also pretty affordable watercolor paper. I have a skinny washi tape I'm going to use today. Just a little tip on the side, if you have a tape that is very sticky or tacky, you can either use your arm to make it a little less tacky, or just put it on a piece of clothing like your pants or something, just a few times, and it'll be less tacky, because you probably have made that experience that if your washi tape is too tacky, you might end up ripping the paper. Another tip is to use a hair dryer or another heat tool before you peel off the tape again, because heat usually dissolves the glue a little bit, so it's usually easier to lift it up. I also have a pencil and ruler just to make sure I get the grid more or less cohesive, the same distances on the paper. I have a couple of colored pencils. I have some crayons. These are wax based, so not water soluble, and I'm mostly going to use the white one. You can use any type of wax crayons or even an oil pastel, even though the oil pastel might smear a little bit, so I do recommend that you use a wax based crayon. And I have a bunch of watercolor paints. These are mostly just different types of blues. So I have an azure blue, this is indigo, ultramarine blue, I have Prussian blue, and then over here this one is a Phtalo turquoise. I also chose an opera pink and a yellow ochre. As for brushes, I have a pretty large, this is a 3/4 inch Filbert brush, and then I have two smaller round brushes. One is a size 4, actually size 6, and then this is a size 2 round brush. I will mostly be working with this large brush, even though our thumbnails are going to be very small, and I do this on purpose so that I basically have no choice to overthink things or be too detailed. And I really strongly encourage you to also choose a large brush for this session today. It doesn't have to be a Filbert brush. You can also use a large round brush, quill brush, or a flat brush, just something that is pretty big and that you might not usually use. And especially if you're prone to getting lost in details, I would suggest that you try something different today and try a large brush. In order to lay down the washi tape, I measure my paper. I usually use centimeters for this one, and this is 18 centimeters across, of which I'll take off 1 on each side. That's where my first layer of washi tape goes on, and then I have 16 centimeters left in between those 2 points, which means that can be divided by 4. So I'm going to do markers. I'm going to lay down markers at every 4 centimeters. Now, of course, you're probably going to use a different size paper than I am using, but just so you get an approximate idea of how you can tackle this. And of course, you don't have to use washi tape. You can just go ahead and do this exercise without taping your paper, and really just very wildly and free paint your swatches. I mean, honestly, one of the reasons I love doing washi tape is the tape peel at the end of the session. Just one more tip about taping your paper. I always recommend that you do one direction first. So you do one layer first and then the other one on top. So this way you can, when you remove the tape, just remove them all in a logical way. So what I mean is, if you did this one first and then you do this one across and then you do the next one vertically, you're gonna have this mixed salad of tapes. This way it's pretty much all in the same layer, you know, the ones in the same directions are all in the same layer, and it's gonna make it a lot easier for you to peel the tape off later on. Let's start with the first row up here, and we're going to do something really simple, just watercolor, and a few different colors. I'm choosing my Phtalo turquoise. I'm using my large Filbert brush, and just going directly from my pan to the paper. Do some quick strokes. And that's it. And then for the next swatch, I'm using the same color to go down till approximately the center, and I'm rinsing my brush now, and I'm picking up my Prussian blue, and again straight from the pan onto my swatch here. And don't fuss with the paints, just let them do their thing, let them blend into each other. You can see how beautifully they already blend here. Alright, the next two panels or swatches, I start with a layer of water first. So I wet down the whole swatch with water, and I grab some of my Prussian blue, again straight from the pan, and just drop in the paint like this, and you can see how beautifully it blooms. I'm rinsing my brush, going back to my Phtalo turquoise, again straight from the pan, not using a palette or anything, and then just dropping in a few drops of Phtalo turquoise, and also leaving a few of these beautiful white, you know, where the paper shines through white. So I'm just gonna leave this. I'm not disturbing the paint anymore at all. And again, start with just water. And let's choose two other colors. So I'm going for my azure blue and dropping in a few dots with azure blue, rinsing my brush, dipping into, oh wait, that's actually not indigo. I thought this was indigo. What is it? Oh, indanthrone blue. Okay, that works too. That's funny. I was so sure this is indigo. And dropping in some of my indanthrone blue. I will go and grab my indigo though, because I usually like having a really dark color to contrast with the lighter color, so I'll be right back. Okay, here's my indigo. I forgot that it was actually inside the tin. Sometimes when the paints are dry, they dry really dark and then they look very similar, especially the dark blues. Okay, but here, indigo. This is a synthetic indigo, and I'm gonna put this in between my other blues. Alright, and this is it for the first row. This is really only what I wanted to do for the first row, so we can have a nice, easy start. And let's move on to the second row. This is where the crayons come into play. For the first swatch, I want you to start laying down the wax crayon, just going left and right, doing quick strokes, and then towards the bottom, make the strokes a bit thicker. And I know it's kind of silly to film because you can't see what I'm doing here. So for the second swatch, let's switch to a few colors. It's also wax crayons, and then about a third of the swatch is where you're gonna lay down some yellow and light pink, like this. And then down here, we're gonna do the same thing, but in reverse. Yellow, yellow, and then the pink down below here. And now for the magic part. I'm picking up my large Filbert and some water, grabbing some of my Prussian blue, a little bit more water. I want this to be pretty watery, and then we'll just go over the swatch and see, ta-da! And then we'll do the same thing over on this side, but instead of doing the whole, painting the whole swatch with the Prussian blue, I'm gonna start here at the bottom, then rinse my brush, dry it a little bit on a paper towel, and then drag my paint from the bottom to the top. And you can see how it starts almost by itself. It goes up into the upper part of the swatch. Okay, this is such a fun technique. Let's do it again for these two swatches over on this side. Okay, white wax crayon. Let's do the same thing we did over on this side. And then for number 4, white strokes at the bottom, and yellow and pink here at the top. Don't overthink it. Really just lay down your crayons very quickly. Grab your brush, dip it in water. I'm gonna choose the Phtalo turquoise this time, and just paint over the whole panel. And as you can see, I press down harder with my wax crayon over on this panel, and I left more strokes, and then here just a few. And then for number 4, I'll do the same thing as over here. I go over the bottom part with my paint. I rinse my brush, dry it a little bit so it's only moist, and then drag my paint, kind of like pick up a little bit of paint, and then gently paint over the upper part here. And if it doesn't turn out great right away, don't worry about it. I really encourage you to not overdo each of these panels. These are just really supposed to be very quick and easy swatches. For row number 3, we're gonna go back to just using watercolor and a brush, and we're gonna start on the right hand side. It's gonna make sense in a minute. Lay down some water first. Pick up some paint. I'm gonna choose my Phtalo turquoise and just a little bit of paint. We want a very light wash. I'm rinsing my brush again, and I'm picking up a little bit of my azure blue. And for this one, I will actually use my palette to dilute the paint a little bit, because this is a very opaque watercolor. Alright, just lay it down here. I'm still holding on to my Filbert brush, and I'm picking up some of my Phtalo turquoise. And now we're going to tackle the first swatch in this row. Okay, hold your brush upright. Don't hold it like you would be writing. Hold it upright. And now I want you to go left and right. And I know this is really weird to hold the brush like this, but bear with me. Really just like try it. Try it. Go left and right. Like this. Okay, I just rinsed my brush and I'm picking up some of my Prussian blue. I'm doing the same exercise here in the second swatch. Quick, 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 and then some thicker ones here at the bottom. And then you can go back in, just add a few really little ones like that. My two panels here are still pretty wet, so I'm gonna wait a little until they're almost dry. So you don't want them to be 100% dry, just almost dry, and then we'll do this exercise over on the side. My paper is almost dry. Maybe it's almost too dry. I'm picking up some of my Phtalo turquoise, checking the consistency and color on my ceramic palette. And because I want this swatch to be tone in tone, I chose the same color as I used in the background. Same thing, we're gonna hold the brush upright like this and move our whole hand and arm in this left and right motion. And then intersperse our thicker strokes with a few thinner ones. Rinsing my brush. And my azure blue really dried to an almost white. Picking up some more of my azure blue, and I'll do the same thing again. Left, right, thicker towards the bottom. And then just add a few soft, skinny strokes in between. Picking up a bit more paint and just dropping in a bit more pigment. Then heading over to my Phtalo turquoise and adding some of my Phtalo turquoise into the still wet strokes towards the bottom of the page. For the last row down here at the bottom, let's combine a few of these techniques. I'm back with my wax crayon. I'm going to put the palette set the palette to the side for now, so it's not in my way. Okay, with the wax crayon, just draw a circle. And again, I know this is kind of silly because you can't see what I'm doing, but full circle at approximately the 1/3 line up here. So 1/3, 1/3, and then in here. So just like we used the wax crayon here in row number 2, I'm just going to use it for this one here. And then we're going to go and do something like this for the bottom part of this swatch. I'm grabbing my ceramic palette again because I still have some of my Phtalo turquoise on it. And then at the bottom third, adding a layer of this Phtalo turquoise. I'm rinsing my brush. Then I'm picking up a tiny amount of opera pink. This is a very strong color, so I really need only a little bit. Holding my brush upright, just like we did in this exercise in row number 3. Just going back and forth like this. Rinsing my brush. I'm picking up some of my azure blue, diluting it a little bit in my palette, And now I'm gonna go in and kind of dab my brush like this. So we're creating diagonal motions, and you can see the white crayon circle emerge from the background. And I think this is pretty dry at this point. So I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of my Prussian blue, mix it with my azure blue down here, and then do the same thing as I did in row 3. Left, right, left, right, left, right, thicker at the bottom, and going back in with a few quick strokes. A little more Prussian blue, and adding a few dots here to my diagonal lines. If the color is too strong, rinse your brush, dab it on a paper towel, and just gently pick up some of the dark pigment. You can definitely see that my wax crayon circle is not really a circle, but that's okay. Picking up a little more of my Prussian blue because I have so much dark paint here at the top. Want to add a little more here to the bottom part. And I'm grabbing my smaller round brush. You're all gonna be like, oh wow! Keiko's she's finally grabbing her round brush. Some opera pink. And just going back into where I already painted a little bit with my opera pink. Just making the color a bit stronger. Adding a bit more water. And then I'll go into the bottom part here and just gently add a few strokes of opera pink. For the next one, we're going to do a little more what looks like a beach scene. Wax crayon again. Remove my palette for now and just add a few strokes with your wax crayon at the bottom third part, so it's like the same height as over here, and just on the left hand side, just a few quick strokes with your wax crayon down here. So it's really just in this part of the swatch. Back with my Filbert, and I'm grabbing some of my yellow ochre here. Painting the bottom part of my swatch, adding a bit more ochre, then kind of curving it up here. So it's like this. Rinsing my brush, picking up some of my azure blue with Prussian blue mix. It's very watery, which is exactly what I like. Still with my Filbert brush. And then I'm doing something similar to here. So pretty much just randomly putting my brush down like that. Now I have to wait until this is dry before I can add the water here and a little piece of coastline here in the back. So let's move on to number 3 and then we can finish number 2 later on. For number 3, I'm grabbing my round brush. I'm starting with my yellow ochre. And here at the bottom third of my page, just adding a few blobs, picking up some opera pink and adding more blobs. And in this case, I really don't mind if these paints and colors mix. That's totally fine. Rinsing my brush, picking up some Prussian blue, and adding kind of like a ragged line here at the top. And then adding a few blobs down here at the bottom of my swatch. Last color for this one is my Phtalo turquoise. And adding a few splotches here, like this. And I'm rinsing my brush again, putting it to the side, back to my Filbert. Picking up some of my diluted azure blue mix and just going over the paper with 2 strokes. And make sure you don't mix these 2 layers. You want to stop right there with a sharp line. And same for this one, I have to wait till everything is dry until I can add some details. Grabbing my round brush and some Phtalo turquoise. Now I'm gonna add my Phtalo turquoise with a sharp line at the horizon line here. And you can see the strokes of wax crayon come through. I'm gonna go over the whole thing from left to right one more time so I can create a really nice sharp line. Rinsing my brush and drying it on a paper towel, picking up my my Prussian blue and just dropping it in here alongside the horizon line. So when you look out to the ocean, you will notice that usually at the horizon line, the ocean seems darker. And this is why I'm adding a bit of a darker blue up here. Now I'm picking up one of my colored pencils and just adding a few birds here in the sky. So you basically just draw a tiny circle and then with 2 quick strokes add the wings. And these are curved strokes. And make sure they don't all look in the same direction, so you want to disperse them across the sky a little bit and have the wings go into different directions too. And I usually choose an uneven number of birds, so I'm going to go with 5. And then I'm going to do a little tiny one here, so this seems to be a bit further away. And another really tiny one here. And I think this is a good camera angle, so let's stay with this one. And now I'm finally picking up my number 2 round brush and a little bit of indigo. Don't use a lot of water for this one, just a little bit of water. So it's mostly pigment, tiny little bit of water. Then you go in here and add like a ragged coastline here. Just on top of the water. Okay, this is it. Let's move on to the 3rd swatch, which is dry now as well. Picking up some of my indigo again. And then same as we did over on this side with the coastline, I'm also going to use my number 2 brush and paint a coastline over here. And then for the next part, I'm rinsing my brush, picking up some of my Prussian blue, and again just a little water, mostly paint, and then starting here from inside these colorful blobs, I'm painting 3 strokes. Let's do another one here. They're crisscrossing. Then at the end of every stroke, make a little, or add a few little tiny strokes like this, kind of like Mickey Mouse open hands. And then going on from these ones, holding your brush upright again, starting at the center, with quick strokes, swooshing your brush outwards, and then make sure at the end you lift them up. Do this to all 4 trees here. And you can go back in and just add a few lines like this. So I'm really only working with the very tip of my fine brush, adding a few very quick strokes like this. It's like you're hardly touching the paper. I'm rinsing my brush, and now I want to go over this part here, so I dilute the tree trunks a little bit and blend it in with my blobs down here at the bottom. Otherwise it's going to be too harsh. Alright. I'm going to leave the water white here, but of course if you like, or let me just demonstrate real quick, you can use one of your colored pencils, go in and just add a few strokes like this. Make sure that the trunks of your palm trees are already dry, otherwise you're going to smear the paint across the paper. On to the next, or actually the last swatch here, and this is going to be a wave. I'm back to my wax crayon, my white one, and I'm actually going to draw in the shape that I'm going to do with my wax crayon so you can see it better. So I'm using a water-soluble colored pencil. So this step is usually not what I would do. I'm just doing this here so you can see the outline that I'm gonna now do with my white wax crayon. So I'm gonna do it on top of my colored pencil here, so that later on I have the option to blend in my water-soluble colored pencil with the rest of the watercolors. And you can see I'm really laying down this layer thick with my wax crayon. And then from this point on, make a few marks diagonally, curved shapes, and not all the same length. Again, if I want to demonstrate with my colored pencil, what I did here is something like this. Alright, I'm picking up my Filbert brush again, picking up some water, a little bit of my Phtalo turquoise, and now I'm just going to do the sky up here. You can go across a few times. I want you to have a really nice smooth layer of Phtalo turquoise. And make sure you leave a little bit of white paper here. Now with the same brush and the same color, I'm gonna go over my wave shape here, and you can already see how nicely the wax crayon comes through here. Now while the paint down here is still wet, I'm gonna add a few more colors. My Prussian blue, rinsing my brush again, and adding some indigo as well. Now with my round brush, I'm going to try and blend the colors, just move the pigment around a little bit, Dab, dab, dab. You can also add some water if you feel like the paper has already dried too quickly, which is true for most cellulose papers. They dry really quick. If you use cotton paper, you'll have a lot more time for this part. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out if this is already dry, the sky part here, and I think it is. And now I'm coming in here and I'm just picking up some of my paint from down here. And painting in a horizon line. Like this. I want this to be a bit darker, so adding a little bit of indigo. Ooh, that was a lot. Oh, that's okay though. I'm drying my brush and lifting some of that paint again. And while the paint is still wet in this part of my swatch, I'm going in with a water-soluble colored pencil. Now this is really important. Don't go in with a regular colored pencil. You might start ripping the paper. This needs to be a water-soluble, very soft colored pencil. Just adding a few strokes like this. So I'm doing this because my wax crayon lines were a bit too uniform and too thick. Same goes for my wave crown here. So I'm trying to make it a bit more frazzled like this. But don't worry about it too much. This is really supposed to be a relaxing swatch type of exercise. So don't go into the details too much. You can really just leave it the way it looks like right after you're done with the watercolor and not go in with any other medium. Just leave it like this. And here we go. There's one more thing to do. I'm gonna let all this dry and then I'll remove the washi tape. My paper is dry and now for the fun part, removing the washi tape. I did use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process, and as I said in the beginning, this is also really useful to make the glue of your washi tape less tacky, and it's going to be easier to remove. Another tip is to pull up the tape at an angle like this, towards the side. And I have to say, this paper, the Canson XL, is really great for washi tape. You can see how easy it is to remove it. There are other papers out there where it's almost impossible to get the washi tape off. So if you're new to this and are looking for an affordable paper, I can really recommend this one. Especially if you want to try out, you know, doing a lot of swatching, using a lot of washi tape. And as you can see, I'm using a decorative washi tape, so I'm not using any type of artist tape, even though I do have it. But I feel that a lot of the decorative washi tapes are low tack, so not very sticky. Of course, I mean, you want something that is sticky enough so that the paint doesn't go underneath it. But I find that for most of my projects, using just simple washi tape is enough. And last one. My dog agrees on whatever I say. Alright, here we go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you again next week for my next live session and for the next video. Until then, happy creating and aloha! to the beach? Yeah?